Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guests are here today to talk about Alzheimer's. Jim Smith and his niece, the rose between two thorns, is Kelly Rhodes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you're here to talk about Alzheimer's. And I assume it's because it's impacted your lives.
It has. Kelly's grandmother, my mother, she does have it, and it's been 4 to 5 years. Started very slow when she lived on her own. We noticed the decline. She eventually moved in with Kelly's mother for several years, and it just got too difficult, too demanding. And now my mother is in Derby Green, and she needs the full-time assistant. So it's impacted our life in the last 4 to 5 years because we've seen grandmother and mother go from a very mature lady to at times a lady with the mind of a very young child. So just how you interact and have a conversation with her has totally changed. It's a different person.
So how old is she?
She just turned 81 last week.
So she's actually, compared to some, she came down with it fairly early.
Well, some come down with it in their 40s and 50s. Yeah. So my mother really started to show signs when she was about 76, 77 years old.
So some people actually, I can think of one person who came down with it in their 50s, but is it, can you tell that somebody has Alzheimer's, or is it still considered like Alzheimer's type symptoms? Because I always heard that you can't totally diagnose it until there's an autopsy. Or has that changed?
No, it can be very difficult. You can show the signs. Dementia is one of it. So, but over the course of time, you see the progression as it does get worse. And we know, common statement in our family is when my mother has a bad day, she has good days and bad days, we know they're going to get worse. She's not ever going to get better. I mean, she's not going to go back. She might stable some for a while, but we know the day's probably going to come when we're going to walk in and we'll say hi, and she won't know who we are. We've seen that already some, but it does get steadily worse. And like you said, an autopsy at the end of her life is really the only way to totally confirm it.
Another thing I understand, because I work with a lot of older people, because I've had some of my best conversations, my best interviews with people in the early stages of Alzheimer's, where they know everything to the minutest details they did when they were younger, whether they were a railroad engineer or fought in World War II. They were so specific that, but then if you add, what I say sometimes is, if you miss it the first time around that they tell you, you can catch it on the second, third, and fourth, because they have a tendency to repeat themselves. But one thing I've heard is that the early stages and the mid stages are actually the most difficult for the patient, because they kind of know, they remember what they once were, but then once you get in advance, that it's hard on the families, but it's easier on them. What do you think, Kelly?
She does get very emotional when she realizes that she's not remembering something. Right. Like even her own birthday. She was actually, this year was really good about it, but even like if it's my uncle's birthday or my birthday, she's really upset when someone lets her know. And she also gets upset when, she's having a bad day and, realizes that things aren't the same anymore with herself. She needs help to, get dressed, and she needs help to eat her lunch. She gets upset with those things too. So she does know that things are not the same as they used to be.
Now, I assume you're probably in your 20s.
Yes.
And so you've, at least your adult life to some degree has been affected by this.
I mean, I'm very health conscious. Some people call me a little crazy. Really trying to look for whatever I can to prevent the Alzheimer's from affecting me or any of my other family members. They don't really know what fully affects it, but there's been a lot of research into different foods you eat and stuff like that. But yeah, it has been a huge effect on my life and my uncle's daughter, and I have a brother and sister as well.
Right. So she lived with you?
She lived with my mom. I was out of the house by the time she moved in, but she did live with my mom for a few years, and we had caregivers coming into the house, taking care of her during the day because my mom was working a full-time job during the week. I actually went in and did a few days a week here and there when I was working part-time to care for her as well. And then it just got to be to the point where she needed people during the night and just basically 24 hours a day. And it was too much for my mom to be getting up with her during the night. So
you know, a lot of people say, and they're well-meaning, they say my parent would never, we would never allow them to go into a nursing home. Never allow. I think we all say that, but you know, that is a hard thing because my mother had a hip replacement and things went wrong, and well, one thing led to another, and we were not qualified to, no, we were not able to take care of her, and she, you know, lived her last few months in Bel Air nursing home, and I still, to a degree, actually wished we could have done things differently. Was that hard for you, Jim?
Well, it was harder on my sister.
Right.
My sister is in her 50s. She's still relatively young, has a family, quite a bit of life to live. And it really was affecting my sister's life and her quality of life.
Right.
And we had to face some hard facts. My mother wasn't going to get better. And we had to look at it, offset it. You know, my sister had made a lot of sacrifice for my mother. It came to the point where we had to make a decision for my mother and as well as my sister. It was pretty much a family made that we were going to have to put my mom in a home. We fought it for many years. My sister did. She was very strong, very brave, made a lot of sacrifice. My mother was very fortunate, but it came to the point where I told my sister, there's no choice. We have to do it. We don't have to like it, but we have to do it. And Derby Green was very good. They worked with us. I mean, they had her in within a week. But I can remember the day I told my mother. She was very upset, a lot of tears, heartbroken. And the next day we were taking her. That morning when my sister brought my mother's suitcase out, my mother recognized the suitcase. It's been her suitcase for years. Like you said, they remember the past. But she had no clue of what I had told her the day before, and she had to be retold. So it was very difficult, but for the sake of my sister, her family, and for my mother, you know, it had to be done. So yeah, people say, I'll never do that. But most people say that without the experience of what it's like when you get to the point that you have to make that.
And there's another thing that the three of us can't fully understand because we're healthy and we're, yes, Jim, you and I are still fairly young on the grand scheme of things.
Quite.
But I've spent a lot of time in nursing homes, you know, just because of my other life and because of my mother. There's a lot of happy people living in nursing homes too, because a lot of people don't want to be dependent on their family, or they also like to hang out around their peers where they have common topics and everything. So you know, at our age, we could, you know, after hanging out at enough nursing homes, I don't even dread if the day should ever come. Besides that, I used to joke to some of the residents where else can you push a button and have somebody, you know, come wait on you? If I had a button at home. But I think that's the other thing is, but I think the idea of nursing homes or residential care homes have really changed since even you and I were kids.
Sure.
So, no, I know that had to have been a struggle because, and I think it's a struggle that, is it true that more Americans are having to face this, Kelly?
It's very true. Alzheimer's is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States, and right now about 5 million people have the disease. And there is what's called early onset, which is when it's like 50 and older, younger. But most people are, over the age of 65. So it is something that they deal with. And getting caregivers to come into your home is one of the most difficult things to do. Just finding someone who's willing to do that, and then also being able to come up with the funds to pay them, is another huge task.
Well, it's my understanding that and this came from a person that that has to provide people to provide. I think maybe it was home health or one of these groups, that because of the funding, some of the day workers and some of the workers, they actually lose people to go work at McDonald's. No disrespect to McDonald's, but these workers, as much as these organizations would like to pay them more, the funding, the state and federal funding isn't there. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to get good workers, I understand, because not everybody wants to do what some of these workers have to do.
Right. It's not easy care, and it's time consuming, and it's also paid pretty poorly, and it depends on the patient. Usually what happens is they're brought into the home and determined how many hours of care this person should receive. So sometimes you're only receiving like maybe 40 hours of care per week for this one patient, and you need more than that.
Right. Even now I'm knocking on the doorsteps of 50, and I imagine you must be like 51, 52.
I'm there.
Right. And my memory, I have the keenest memories for just nonsensical facts, or just little teeny things but I put my key down and I don't have any clue where I put it. And I've often wondered, in all seriousness, is because my memory isn't what it used to be, what is truly the signs of onset of Alzheimer's?
So they say it's not if you set your key down and you can't find it. It's when you go to pick up the key and you have no clue what it goes to. Oh. So the biggest that's the biggest thing, is when you have something and you have no clue what it's for, or what it's, where it needs to go. With my grandmother, it was basically not being able to do day-to-day tasks. That's when she was living alone. We started noticing that, laundry was difficult for her, dishes, making her bed, just day-to-day things that cooking. She completely stopped cooking. She loved to bake. She just, day-to-day things she wasn't doing like she used to be able to do. And then also they say isolation, not wanting to go out and participate with your family or your friends, stuff like that.
So at what point, Jim, was there ever a conversation with her where, because probably at first you were just noticing these things, but you were just thinking, well, you must have had to really kind of figure out whether this is just, because you can have a poor memory as you age but not have Alzheimer's. So did you kind of struggle with that and talk amongst each other?
I did. I can remember it was in the summer and my sister was at my house and she said, "We need to talk about our mother." And I'm like, well, what's going on? I was kind of oblivious. I was so busy in my own life that in a way I was kind of neglecting my mother. And my sister used to spend a lot of time with her, the mother-daughter relationship. And she started to inform me of a few things, and I'm like, well, that's not right, this isn't. And my sister brought it up that she might, have an issue and a problem. And then once I started to pay more attention, lived up to my responsibilities, I could see what my sister was talking about. So at first, I was very naive to my sister, informed me. Thank God she did. And then you could see it with my mother. You were supposed to pick her up to take her to a doctor's appointment, completely not aware. She wouldn't get dressed during the day, stay in her, her nightgown. Would go up for a meal and forget you were coming, not put anything, in the oven. It just, like my niece said, general things that my mother used to be so sharp on. And we would have conversations with her at the kitchen table, just talking, and it was obvious. You could tell that she was starting to be confused with things that she never was. It was a slow progress. I mean, looking back, it wasn't something that just dropped in our laps, but over the course of the last 5 years, we've seen it steadily, work it up to the point where she is now. So, but it's difficult, and and like we mentioned earlier, she became aware that she wasn't remembering things, that things were starting to kind of fall apart, were not the way, and it was very difficult for her to kind of watch your whole life just kind of unravel.
Yeah, because I know this is hard to think about. There will be a day probably when you walk in there, and you two will probably be.
She won't know us.
Yes, she won't know you.
We've experienced that a little bit so far. And what really helps, if you can, is you mentally have to prepare yourself. It's not their fault. Like, my mother was never a woman to swear or cuss. And occasionally she does. Sometimes a patient can have a violent streak. They can get mean, they can get ugly. And my mother really hasn't shown signs of that. A little bit, a snippet here, a snippet there. But she hasn't really come to that point. But occasionally you might hear her, mutter under her voice. She'll swear, which is something my mother never did. So it's an aspect, the brain is so powerful.
Yeah, because I've heard that from other people, and some of them just joke about it. It was like their loved one held it in for all those years and put on a very soft exterior, so when their mind starts to go, all of a sudden all that stuff
just comes out.
And the other thing about, because I know there's probably even people watching this show who are saying, no, I would never allow my mother to stay in a nursing home. But on the other hand, it's also for their safety as well, because how often do you hear now about people wandering off? You hear, I'm not saying it's a daily occurrence, but it's almost a weekly occurrence now. You see on Channel 3, they have a bulletin about somebody with Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. They're looking for them. So it really is a sometimes it's just something you have to do.
It definitely is. We actually experienced one time where she was home and there was people inside my mom's house, and they just didn't see her leave the front door. And luckily someone that was friends with my mom drove by and saw her and knew that she shouldn't be out alone. So thankfully she brought her back to my mother's house and everything worked out okay. From then on, the front door was locked and, kept a bigger watch on her. But the nursing home part, it was a really difficult thing, especially, I think, even more so definitely for my mom and for me. For us girls, I'll show a little bit more emotion. But we pretty much live there now. Right. Someone's pretty much there to see her every day. Her birthday, which was the other week, she had like 12 visitors. She had someone there every part of the day. And we make sure that our presence is known, and we go and participate in activities with her. We take her out still for family Sunday dinners as much as we can. So she knows that someone's going to be there to see her. Well,
I think you guys should be commended because, as I said, especially with my mother being in the nursing home, I spent, I actually lived there pretty much, especially her final days. But I would set up my business right there. As in, I'd have a table, I'd be with her, I'd type. There are people in nursing homes who never, ever get a visitor. And that is, I know people get caught up in their lives, and people wondered how come I did what I did. I said, well, my mother, even though she had to be there, doesn't mean I was going to abandon her. I did exactly like what.
Still your mother. Right,
and but you do see. You see people there that never get a visitor, and it's a lot of them. They're very aware of it, and that's how come I still visit I still visit nursing homes when I can because there's a lot of people who don't appear to have anybody.
People have this image of a nursing home. Most of us don't visit a nursing home or spend time there unless you have to. Maybe you've gone when you were in school or some organization. And I had that stereotype image. But since my mother's been there over the course of time and I've gone up, and you get adjusted to the system, how it works. You become close with the nurses, the people that work there, the other residents. And I actually enjoy. I go up quite often on a Sunday afternoon, and it's fun to go up. You have a good time. It's relaxing. In a way, I look at it as a way to kind of escape the hectic week, because in some ways, it's much more simple. With my mother, it's simple time. You can joke, you can laugh. The serious aspects of the week don't really seem to matter. So it's really, if you've never been and you are being faced with putting a loved one, you need to go and spend some time and get adjusted and get used to it and give it a fair opportunity.
Oh, I agree.
To judge it without seeing it, that's the mistake I made. And now I've realized.
Well, as I said, I think when you're younger and healthier, you have a tendency to think different than when you get a little bit older. Okay, you have a walk coming up.
Right. We're doing the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which there's 5 different walks throughout the state. We're participating in the one in Burlington, which is actually in Shelburne at the Shelburne Museum, which is September 21st. Last year we had a team of about 4 people, and we really didn't do much fundraising. My mom was actually the person who saw through the Alzheimer's website the link about doing the walk, and so she got a few of us involved in it. This year we're trying to go a little bit bigger and do a little bit better. We have a bigger team. My uncle and his family are participating. It's a 2-mile walk event, and all the funds go for care and research of Alzheimer's. Our team name is Mary's Marchers. That's my grandmother's name. And right now we're in the process of fundraising for a benefit bingo we're doing May 3rd at the Newport Municipal Building. And we are going to be placing donation cans throughout the community at some of the local businesses, so people can look for those. And we're also going to be doing hopefully another benefit later in the summer.
Right. So you said May 3rd is the
benefit bingo.
And when's that?
It's 1 p.m. Doors open at noon. It's the Newport Municipal Building. And we're doing a 50-50 raffle and bake sale as well. And businesses have been donating for prizes.
Now, is there a contact number that Todd can put up on the screen, or a website where people can go to learn more about, or maybe to contact one of you?
My cell phone, which is 673-8652, 802. And also you can go to the Alzheimer's Association website, just type that in your Google search, and click on Walk to End Alzheimer's, and you can type in either my name, Kelly Rhodes, or Mary's Marchers, and that will bring you to our team page. There's more information about our family, and you can also donate right through the website.
How about other people? Is it too late for other people to join?
Nope. You can join anytime. You can start your own team. We would be willing to have other people join our team, and you can do that all through their website as well.
Now, Jim, when you talk to people about your mother having Alzheimer's, are you surprised how many people this has touched, as in other people have people in their lives?
Yeah, when you tell people that your mother has this issue, you'd be surprised how many other people will tell you, well, I had a relative, an aunt, an uncle, or my grandparents, or one of my parents. It just seems, until you know somebody that's been affected by it, you really don't realize how big and large of an issue it is, and how many other people are out there with the same, concerns and issues as you. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of the connections. My niece, my daughter, my nephew have been contacting dozens of businesses And some of the people that they spoke to are more than willing because they said, oh, my father or my grandmother. There's a connection. And so it's a way for them to reach out and to help as well.
Now, do you worry yourself for your future? Because there is isn't there a genetic link?
There is. Yeah, everybody worries. It's who we are. And there are some precautions and things you can do, but I can't live my whole life the way I need to, worrying about it day from day. I never thought it would happen to my mother. I mean, I'm still just kind of in shock that it did. I mean, you know, it's your mother. You always think of them as being invincible, and now it's happened, so it could happen to any one of us. But honestly, I'm going to live my life now to my fullest, the best I can, doing what I'm doing and meant to do. And I hope and pray it doesn't happen, but if it does, it's nice to know that there are things in the work to help. There's good care, prevention, research, but we can't live our life in fear. I mean, my mother never did.
Right.
You know, so I think it, you know, in a way of honoring her and gratitude to her, that we need to live our life as she did. And if unfortunately we should have to deal with this at a later age, well, you know, I'm not going to spend my whole life worrying.
Now, Kelly, we only have about 3 more minutes left. Has there been any headway in this research? Like, have they been able to slow the progression?
I mean, they've done a lot of research with medications. You know, just talking to people, them telling me how, oh, my parent or grandparent had, you know, signs of dementia, and there wasn't much, you know, many medications on the market at that time. So they definitely have come a long way with medication. Just the funding for care has been huge. Last year it cost like $200 billion for Alzheimer's patients medically. So that's a huge push as well, is just funding for all of it.
And then we have a huge wave with Jim and I on the tail end of the baby boom. So there's a huge wave of people that are aging all at once, and so the issues facing society because of this wave of potential people with Alzheimer's is going to be enormous.
Yeah, they're saying like 2050, it will go from $200 billion to like $1.3 trillion. That will be if they don't come up with more research.
It's the 6th largest cause of death, but it's also one that is increasing in number the fastest over the other 5.
Right.
So it's a growing.
Right. And I think one thing is we're such a mobile society, whereas like my family is large. Well, no, actually 2 of my boys are living out of state, but you know, my brothers are all here, so, and my father's still here, and my wife's family's here. So, you know, you're able to take care of each other. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people now that the parent is living here and the kids have scattered to the world, and as much as they want to help, you know.
Sure. And families are smaller.
Right,
You're
that's
not having
true.
4 or 6 kids, maybe 1 child. And that's a large responsibility.
true.
And if they live out of state,
Right.
it's hard. It's hard for family to take care of family when there isn't as much family.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. What are your final words, Jim?
Well, I appreciate the time. Hope people would come out and support the bingo and the walk.
And again, the dates are?
May 3rd
For the
is the bingo, and September 21st is the march. There is a march in St. Johnsbury. I think it's September 13th or 15th. Theirs is a little earlier, but there is one in St. J. And just that if people are beginning to experience this, you know, don't fight it, don't neglect it, meet it head on, deal with it early. Don't be afraid of the nursing homes. It's your family member. Do what you have to.
There's a lot of info out there too. I know my mom's participated in a few Alzheimer's groups that help you deal with caregiving for your family member. And the Alzheimer's website is really helpful too. They have a lot of helpful hints on how to deal with your loved one. And we're also interested, hopefully next year, maybe starting a walk here in Newport, because like you had said, there is a lot of people who we come into contact with that have a loved one that does have Alzheimer's.
And again, what is your number that people can...
My number is 673-8652.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I think it's your mother, your grandmother should be happy that you have stuck by her, because, you know, as I said, in my other world, I'm going to tell you, I would love to say you're the norm. I'm not quite so sure. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of older people out there that just don't have families that will rally around them, like the two of you and your families have done. And I commend you for that, because I just think, they were there. They were there for us, and we've got to be there for them. And we all fail ourselves occasionally, but I think in the long run, you guys are going to be happy as you lead your mother and your grandmother through this journey. Yep. All right, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And thank you for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.